Today on Locked On Red Wings, we begin our player grades with the captain Dylan Larkin, Gustav Lindstrom, and Magnus Hellberg.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the Daily J, a WWJ news radio podcast with Scotty as the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. And Scotty, first of all, just you and me again, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Yeah, it's been a minute since we just kind of ran it back here.
Yeah, it has. And I'm really excited because we just did a flurry of draft profiles because I stated it last week. Wanted to get ahead of that. Last year, I think we could have done better. So I wanted to get ahead of it. We still have plenty of time until the draft lottery, which is in May here. And then, but this week I really wanted to start doing player grades. We did that last year. It seemed to do well. And to note, guys, when we do these player grades, first and foremost, our hard set rules. We're not going to grade anyone who played less than 20 games in a ringed wheel this season, and they have to have finished the team with Detroit. Now or finished the year with Detroit. Now that doesn't include guys like Robbie Fabry, Zadina Rasmussen, who are injured. They're still on the team. They're just hurt. I'm talking guys like Sundqvist, Bertuzzi, Vrana, guys who got dealt or sent down to the minors. We're not going to grade. We're probably going to make an exception for Simon Edvinsson, just because you can't not. And we're going to try and do this 3 players a day just to get a good full discussion on every player. But let us know what you guys think in the comments. If that's a little bit slow roll for you guys, just tell us in the comments that you would like to see us speed it up a little bit and we can move on to other topics. Or if you would like us to slow it down and maybe do an entire episode on one player or another. Scotty, I know you did that with Locked On Tigers over the summer. Long off season over there for you.
A lot of deep dives on a lot of players, but that is definitely the people that want that are definitely the more analytically inclined, I'll say, because that's pretty much what you're talking about when you're talking about somebody for half an hour in one conversation. There's a lot of deep dives on a lot of very intricate numbers for sure.
But to keep it simple, we're going to start off with 3 players in this episode. That will be the captain, Dylan Larkin, who will lead the show off with Gustav Lindstrom and Magnus Hellberg. Yes, I know Magnus Hellberg technically played less than 20 games, but he was a goalie, so of course he would. We're going to grade all 3 of the goalies as well. But Scotty, we're going to lead off with the captain because I think he is probably the easiest player to talk about and also the guy we probably are going to have the most to talk about in this grading process. When we talk about Dylan Larkin, keep in mind that Dylan Larkin this season set a career high for his season statistics. He had 79 points in 80 games, which is 6 points better than his career prior best. He had 47 assists, which ties his career high in assists, and he had 32 goals, which ties his career high in goals. Those obviously came in different seasons to combine for his career high in points. Scotty, when we talk about grading players, we have to keep in mind, for us and our arbitrary, let's admit it, arbitrary grading system, we try and keep in mind what our expectation for that individual player was. We don't grade every single player on the same curve. For our purposes, I think that Dylan Larkin gave us what we were hoping for this season going into a contract year. Scotty, what did you give Dylan Larkin for a player grade?
Yeah, this was either an A or an A- for me, and I think I'm probably leaning an A. Just because, like you said, we've been very consistent since the show has been you and I in our grading system and how we grade based on expectations, but based on our own expectations of the player. And when it comes to Larkin, I would say that a point a game and staying healthy for essentially the entire season and putting up new career marks and getting an extension worked out for the foreseeable future. It's really hard to poke too many holes in the season. The only thing I guess that would have taken it from an A to an A plus for me is if there was just more goal scoring specifically. But like it's still, again, based on expectations, he still put up what, a tied a career high in goals, you said. So
Tied a career high in goals and assists, both of those combined for the career high in points.
right, yeah, of course. So yeah, like I think that this is a pretty easy A. And then again, when you throw in off the ice stuff like getting that extension done and whatnot, and honestly, a big thing for me was staying healthy. And I know that a lot of that is out of the control of the players a lot of times, and that's not a reason to single handedly like dock someone's grade either. But with the unfortunate injury stuff that he's had over the last couple of seasons, it was nice just to see a full, healthy point a game pace from your captain, and he got an extension. Like hard to find too many faults or dock that grade too much. Like I said, only thing that would have gotten an A plus for me was if the pure goal scoring numbers were even higher than the already tied for career high that he set.
Yeah, I think for me, this is a easy A for Dylan Larkin. You look at this player going into the season, like we talked about, expectations, Scotty, were that he set a career high in points and he reached that point per game mark. And people will scoff because, 79 and 80, it's technically not a point per game. It's, for all intents and purposes, guys, he finished a point per game. He reached
all right.
the limits of the expectations of what we asked of him in a contract year. And the thing, too, is there's that little bit of that concern in the back of your head, right, Scotty, that when he signs that contract, he inks that deal, the motivation will be gone. After he signed that deal, he went on a tear. He stayed just as hot. And when the team had nothing left to fight for, he stayed just as hot. He played from the beginning of the season all the way through to the end of the season. And that's exactly what we wanted to see out of Dylan Larkin. He took his game to another level. And I want to also point out, he took his production to a new level in a new system that is strongly defensive oriented. If I have one complaint about Dylan Larkin, I think that the defensive, he shows flashes of defensive brilliance. He does, but it's not consistent. That's my only complaint about Dylan Larkin, because he has the playmaking ability. He has the play driving ability. He's got the speed. He's one of like two players who can consistently get across the blue line with the puck. And of course, he's got the goal scoring ability as well. Offensively, it's all there. For me, I just want to see a little bit more consistency out of the defensive side of the puck. But that, again, is just me being nitpicky. He finished in the top 10 in expected goals for percentage in this team. And of course, when you're the guy who gets the most minutes on forward and you're playing on a team that isn't a playoff team like the Red Wings and still has a lot of holes, it's tough to finish at that number one spot. To be in the top 10 with as many minutes as he played as a forward at expected goals for percentage is an impressive look for me. Dylan Larkin is an easy A. Nitpicking aside, I think when the expectations we set out for him in the preseason, when we did our expectations, I was putting all these shorts on YouTube of like what to expect of every individual player. This is what we expected, and he gave us it. The question is, in his age 27 season, will he be able to take it again to the next level?
For sure. Yeah, I think looking ahead is definitely just the natural reaction to Larkin. Really, his entire career so far, it's been, what can he do next year? What can he do next year? And when having that conversation, I think that, we've talked about it a lot, honestly, how much more his production could even improve again, like if he was surrounded by playoff caliber talent. And hopefully that's something that this offseason can provide him to some extent. But I just to wrap up like this season specifically, it's pretty hard to, like I said, pretty hard to poke holes in his season. I think that this was exactly not only what we wanted, but it was exactly what the team needed as well. They needed that solid, consistent production from the captain. Again, I cannot stress how much the extension being thrown in there definitely solidifies his grade for me as well. Yeah, I agree with you. This is an A season for the captain.
Absolutely. And if you guys are looking for new hiring candidates, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like matching, assessments, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Candidates you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search, according to U.S. Indeed data. With Indeed, matching as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. It's hiring at warp speed. So go to Indeed. It knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring today. Again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application, pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, do you have any final thoughts on the A we just gave to the C, Dylan Larkin?
That was good, dude. No, I don't. This was a very, very solid season, and I don't know. I'm trying to just think of how many A's I'm going to give out, and
It won't be many.
He will, probably be one of the few.
When it comes to solid A's, that's the guy.
Yeah.
So let's move on then to the second guy in our conversation, and that'd be the first of the 3 goalies that the Detroit Red Wings saw this year. They didn't pick him up till partway through the season when just things weren't looking too great on the goalie front with Alex Nedeljkovic. They picked him up off of waivers. Did they pick him up off Seattle or did they pick him up off Ottawa? Because he went back and forth like 3 times.
I genuinely don't remember which one we actually picked him off of, but I know that when he showed up, he had like one piece of equipment from every team that he had played for so far that season.
He ended up still wearing his Magnus Hellberg pads from last season, his Detroit Red Wings pads from last season, because he still had them in a storage unit here in Detroit, I think it was.
Yeah.
So Magnus Hellberg this season, he was a goalie for sure. He was one of the goalies in the NHL. 17 games played, save percentage of .885. And goals against average of 3.29. It's really hard, I would say. We didn't have expectations for Magnus Hellberg coming into the season, obviously, Scotty, because of the fact that he wasn't on the team. So, but we advocated to bringing him back last year simply because it made no sense that the Red Wings signed him randomly to end the year with the Red Wings. It's like maybe they signed him to an extension to see what he's got. They didn't. So here we are, and we have him at the end of the year. What grade would you give Magnus Hellberg?
That's a great question, Brian. It's.
I was filling time, hoping to give you time to think about it.
I appreciate it.
Also deferring to you because I don't have an answer yet.
Right. I mean, it's tough, man. Like you said, that we didn't have expectations for him going into the season, but even when he joined, I don't think anyone's expectations were like super high. I don't think anyone saw us bring in like Hellberg and was immediately like, oh, well, he's going to take over the backup goalie job and he's going to be exactly what we need. Like we like knew what he was already. We've known what he is. Like he's one of the, like in baseball, you call it a 4A player. Like he's the proverbial, if he played a full season in the AHL, he would be one of the better goalies in that entire league. But at the NHL, he's a high 880 save percentage type of goalie. Like that's what he is, and that's what he was. So it's hard for me to, like, I don't know, just like give him like a D- or an F or something, because like he didn't plummet our expectations, but I'm also not giving those numbers like an A or a B either. So I think I'm going to go with like a D+. I think that's what I'm going to go. Maybe like a C-, somewhere in that kind of range. Like we brought him in to try and
basically band-aid a situation.
Yeah, try and like stop the bleeding. Like try and figure out a way to stop the leak that was backup goaltender, and just, because Ned obviously wasn't cutting it. We'll talk about him as this kind of whatever series you want to call it goes on. But as far as Hellberg goes, like they brought him in to try and be a serviceable backup goalie, and he like really wasn't. So yeah, I'm gonna go with like a D plus.
Yeah, it's a tough one because one, we're goalie defenders. Like we're very staunch. We were
For
very
sure.
proud about that fact.
Very.
And so when you look at statistics, I mean, goals against average, in my eyes, that's not a goalie statistic. That is a team statistic because so much has to go on in front of the goalie on the ice before that puck even gets to him. Save percentage, I think that obviously the goalie has a lot more to do with, but again, volume has a huge impact on that. Volume of shots. If he's facing 40 shots a night, a lot more of those are going to go in than if he's facing 20 shots a night, ideally. Now, though, Hellberg did have plenty of starts where he faced like 16 and let in 4. So it's one of those situations where the expectation was low, but I don't even think he met that expectation, if I'm being honest.
That was my point too. Like we brought him in to try and find someone to be a solid backup goalie, and he wasn't that. So
his goal saved above expected is -4.5. So across the entire season. So he was if you
and that's
believe
how many
in
games?
17 games with the Red Wings.
So like,
if you want, technically that would count, I believe, his Ottawa games as well. So he was one Ottawa game, 18 games. But he was, and for the record, in the Ottawa game, he was like lights out. So that would be benefit him to include that.
Naturally.
So when taking that into account in regards to Magnus Hellberg, you just have to kind of say it like it is, and you gave him a D plus. I'd even go as far as saying D, maybe D minus, but for the sake of giving him a grade, D. And I think that's generous just because we're goalie defenders. Because we can talk about how the team in front of him wasn't very good. We talked about how the offense, they could score, but the defense, bottom 2 pairs, was pretty leaky throughout the year. It was off, like for a while you thought you had 2 pairs, and then it fell off. You really only had 1 pair consistently by the middle of the season. And so you can make all those defenses, but the numbers in the end don't lie, and they don't tell the full story. I mean, I could talk about Magnus Hellberg as a whole, about why it was a little bit of a letdown because of the fact that, he would chase out of his crease a little bit too far one way or the other. He'd over lateral one way or the other, and his glove hand wasn't that great. And he just we were hoping to bring in somebody who would stop the bleeding, and he didn't do that. And every once in a while he had a good game, but he had 5 quality starts according to that metric, if you believe in that metric. So his quality start percentage was .385, which isn't great. So it's just everything you saw from Hellberg and everything that the statistics show that it wasn't a great year for him. He underperformed the expectations that were there for him already. And that's why I'm comfortable giving him the D or the D minus. That being said, though, as I know it sounds like I'm just ragging on the guy, and I hate when it sounds like I'm just ragging on players because we understand that they're people too, right? That I want to see him stay in the NHL. I want to see him get another contract because I do think there's still massive amounts of potential there. But it's just with him, I think a lot of it is fundamental. And I love his story of finding his way back to the NHL years later. But I think the stuff with him is fixable. I think it's technique. And I know he's not a young goalie. He's 31 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not old for goalies, but it's not young for goalies either. If it's just the technique, if he can address the muscle memory issues, he's got the size and he's got this athleticism. Just if you can adjust the fundamental athletics, I think he can be an NHL caliber, at least backup. But this year, he just didn't have it, which is why I got to give him a D.
Yeah, I think one of your points in there was like the goalie defender-ness of us. And like while I do like fully acknowledge that we are that, I think my grade is honestly just more so, again, just like trying to base it off what the bar was for what we needed out of a backup goaltender, like more than anything. And like it was a low bar. Like we really just need, like the Ned thing happened. He had a really, really rough start to the season, obviously gets sent down. They just needed someone to show up. And if he even he wasn't great, but oh, he like was the backup goaltender for the remainder of the season, then like, okay, that's whatever, a C minus ish, C area, not stellar, not going to be the backup goalie next year, but like at least was a body that kept us in some games in the second half of the season after Ned got sent down. But I mean, like they were carrying 3 goalies at one point. Ned came back, like, and I know Husso
It
got
was a
hurt and whatnot.
circus.
Like, yeah, there's a lot, but there was a lot going on in net for sure. But it just like he didn't even really provide. He didn't even really provide that. So I agree with everything you said. I think it's. For me, it's just basing off of what the team's expectations were and what I think most people's expectations were of him, and didn't quite live up to those.
Absolutely. So when we come back, we'll move on to our Gustav Lindstrom, our first of our defenders. As we're talking about Lindstrom because there was some news in the media today, some rumors. We'll say rumors rather than news because nothing's confirmed yet. But we'll address those and then give our player grade on Gustav Lindstrom as well. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about Gametime. If you guys are tired of using one app that is just a hassle to make work and always way more expensive than you think it's going to be, I recommend you try Gametime instead. Gametime is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive, and buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Segment 2, Lockdown Red Wings, or segment 3, Lockdown Red Wings podcast. I just love talking to Scotty so much that I don't want it to end. I just want to keep going. Any response to that?
That's not true.
Wow. I compliment you, and then you're gonna do me like that?
Let me go find all the clips of you saying you hate me and don't want to talk to me.
But I say it with love. It's endearing.
So endearing.
So let's talk about Gustav Lindstrom here in our final segment of Tuesday's episode here. Now, Ice Hockey Gifts tweeted out, and we know Ice Hockey Gifts is a huge Red Wings fan. And
S-tier Twitter account, man.
And they love the Swedish guys.
Yes.
And
must follow Twitter account for Red Wings fans.
They tweeted out that Expressen reports that Gustav Lindstrom is actively searching for a place to play in Europe next season. Now, that leads us perfectly into kind of a two-headed conversation on Gustav Lindstrom. Although they're married together, it's not really two separate conversations, just kind of one in general. Lindstrom this year had, in 36 games played, as like your 7th D-man, sometimes your 8th D-man, 8 points, 7 assists, 1 goal, which is less points than he had last year. And granted, like almost double the amount of games. This season, this young player who is on an expiring RFA contract, who's only 24 years old, saw his role lessen. Former second-round pick, 38th overall, saw his role lessen with the Detroit Red Wings when you would hope he would take a step into securing an everyday spot on a bottom pairing with the NHL roster. So when I heard the news, it was really no surprise to me that Gustav Lindstrom was searching for a new place to play. Because if I'm going to be honest, Scotty, he might be an F for me.
I mean, I don't hate it. I was kind of debating in my head between like a D minus or a D. So like I mean, I certainly don't think that we're too far off. Yeah, I mean, you kind of said it best there in your monologue when you said that he, in the third pairing that going into the season, we were looking for anyone to just like kind of take that job and run with it, right? Like we had, especially after the free agents that they had brought in, like they kind of had a somewhat solidified top four like decor, right? And then like Waldman's kind of surgence this season certainly helped that as well. But like they kind of had an idea, and they were like one defenseman kind of short, like the sixth and seventh, I guess, as well. That sixth and seventh D man, like who was really going to take those jobs and run with it? I guess more so six, just because that's someone that's dressing every night. And he was in the running for that. Like he was in that conversation. That was someone that we talked about going into the year as like, if he plays well, like he could really kind of take that job. And just didn't. And now not only is like most likely not going to be back on the Red Wings next season, but I mean, now to the news that you just said, might not even be in the NHL next season. So,
yeah, it's going to be really tough with the. It stinks because, as Red Wings fans, there's definitely a bias inside of us where we root for literally every single player on the team.
yeah, of course.
Like it stinks talking about Magnus Hellberg and like giving him a D because you want him to succeed. Same with Gustav Lindstrom. I have a thing. I love defensive-oriented defensemen, and that's what Gustav Lindstrom is. You look at his point totals; it doesn't matter. The point totals for Gustav Lindstrom don't matter because that's not his style of game.
Yeah, of course.
He's a defensive-first defenseman. Very rare breed in the NHL these days. And so I was rooting for him because one thing this team needed more than anything was defense. And after his season last year, he showed a couple flashes, I thought, of really solid defense, but would get caught occasionally and get burned. I was really hoping that he this year could take a step forward in his development and really secure that spot as the sixth defenseman, the bottom pairing, just everyday guy. So we wouldn't have to keep rotating in Haig, Osterley, guys like that.
Again, it was also up for grabs.
It was
like
up for
they
grabs.
had five, like on opening night, they had between free agents and people returning, you had five, like these five dudes are gonna be in your like decor the entire season if they stayed healthy. And then there was just one spot just wide open for the taking, and Edvinsson obviously wasn't ready. So then it was just up for grabs, and like no one took it. So
Yep.
now it's again like looking ahead. It's very much going to be an Edvinsson thing.
Well, and he was the third worst player on the team with expected goals for percentage, and he was the worst defenseman on the team at expected goals for percentage at 41.86. And the thing again, you have to keep in mind sample size, right? Like played only half the season, really less than half the season in all reality. He's playing bottom pair minutes, so he's getting the least amount of minutes. So like that number's amplified. It's either going to be amplified in the better direction or in the worst direction. But in the same token, you have to also keep in mind he's on the bottom pair. He's going to be playing against the weakest competition the other team has to offer most times. Obviously, like changes on the fly happen and things can change. So for him to post the worst expected goals for percentage on the team at 5-on-5, playing against the weakest competition the opponents have to offer in an ideal situation, it's disappointing. And he had a disappointing season, and he didn't live up to my expectation for him by a long shot. He didn't even sniff close to securing that sixth D spot. So that's why I unfortunately got to give him an F. And he might be, I don't know, I'd have to look back over the roster again and see how I feel, but he might be my only genuine F this season.
Yeah, I I have no rebuttal. Like I don't have any rebuttal. I think I'm gonna go with a D minus just for the fact that that job was up for grabs, meaning that I didn't expect him to like be our sixth D man, or else it wouldn't have been an up for grabs job. But he certainly didn't win it. So and as all the numbers you pointed out, and just like watching him this season, just watching the team this season, I'm pretty clear that he was kind of on the outside looking in by the end of the season. When it in terms of players that were going to be high priorities to bring back. So but kind of cool if he does go back to Europe. I mean, I don't know. Hopefully he finds some success there. That's kind of cool.
What stinks about losing him, though, is you're already thin on the right side. and now you're losing one of your few actual straight up right-handed defensemen.
I mean, I
But
don't
I
think
mean,
that
you
really
can
matters,
probably
though.
no, it doesn't. But again, I'm nitpicking, right?
I guess like you were just not going to bring in any right hand D-mans this offseason. Like if it was the middle of the season, that would if we had a game tomorrow, I'd agree that would be an issue. But you have all the free agency and stuff to address that. I don't think that's really an issue.
Yeah. All right, Scotty, do you have any final thoughts on any of the players that we talked about today?
I don't think so, man. No, I'm pumped though. This is always a fun time of year as we do, like prospect profiles. We do this. We kind of put a bow on the season that just ended, and then once we get through this, then free agency draft. We start looking ahead. Fun times.
Yeah, we're also going to be doing player awards sometime, probably mixed into the middle of this because we
Yeah.
don't want to bore you guys too much by doing player grades like 8 episodes in a row or however long the series ends up being as we do 3 episodes. Or 3 players an episode rather. So we'll try and mix things up and break it up so that we keep things fresh for you guys. But this is the first episode in this player grade series. And then I felt like I had one other thing to add. Oh, yes. Let us know what you guys grade the 3 players we talked about in today's episode, Dylan Larkin, Magnus Hellberg, and Gustav Lindstrom in the comments below on our YouTube page. So make sure to do that. Scotty, what do?
We ball.
We ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.